once again from AllBallsNoBull.com. We are here at Quinnipiac University with Brijesh Patel, who is the strength and conditioning coach here at Quinnipiac. First, we're going to start with Brijesh telling us a little bit about who he is and what he does, and we're going to lend itself to some very specific items relative to giving you guys some good information. Brijesh, what I'd like to start off with is if you could just give us a little bit about your background. One of the things that's really interesting, not to diminish you, but that you kind of apprenticed under Mike Boyle, who's like the top guy maybe in the world right now. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach when I was a senior in high school, and so I went to the University of Connecticut and volunteered my second week of school with the strength and conditioning department there, and every year I got more and more responsibility. They let me observe, and they eventually let me coach, and they let me help out with the athletes and help out with a number of different teams there. And then after my junior year of my undergrad, I had the opportunity to intern with Mike Boyle at his professional facility in Massachusetts, and learned a ton. And Mike became a good friend of mine, and definitely a mentor of mine, and someone that we have a very mutual respect for each other. And then I went back to school, and I got thrown into a really unique situation. One of the full-time assistants had left, and Coach Martin, Jerry Martin, the head strength coach there, he's like, would you mind helping us out? So he actually, I'm like, yeah. So he gave me two teams. He gave me baseball and then track and field. And so it was a huge opportunity being an undergrad. I went to classes with some of these same kids I had to coach, and I dealt with the training staff, the coaching staff, and it was basically a full-time strength coach as an undergrad. And then I did a great job, and so they kept me on to be a GA. I also did another internship at the College of the Holy Cross after my senior year of college. Did that for the summer, came back to UConn to be a GA for a year and a half. Then a full-time job came open at Holy Cross. I was there for 4.5 years, where I worked with 14 different sports. So if you name a sport, I probably worked with it between my career at UConn and then at Holy Cross too. And then this opportunity came up at Quinnipiac to be the first full-time strength and conditioning coach here, and I jumped on it. It was it's been a unique experience, being able to start something from the ground level.
Wow. And
really establishing my principles, my philosophies, my ideas towards the entire athletic department. So it's been a great ride.
one of the, you talked about being on the ground floor, and in a way I think that this industry is kind of on the ground floor with some of these ideas. It wasn't too terribly long ago, I don't think much more than 10 years ago, that the Oakland Athletics were the first major league team to have a weight room. One of the things I want to get at is that there is a real reality to what are evaluation techniques for these kids and appropriate strength and conditioning for that age group as opposed to the higher level athlete. Can you address that?
Yeah, it's once you get them at the college level or professional level, they're not necessarily considered elite, but they're closer to their elite status. They spend the majority of their time towards one sport. When you're a younger athlete, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, you're still developing. You're still developing from a maturity standpoint, from a hormonal standpoint, from a physical standpoint. Your body's still developing, and it's really not a great time to specialize.
What the industry, because they make money, they advertise that, you've got to play baseball year round. You've got to, you got to give us money to teach you year round, and it's just not true. In actuality, you become a better baseball player, or football player, basketball player, if you don't specialize when you're younger. Exactly. Do you feel that this is correct?
I agree 100%, and there's a number of examples out there. There's a number of NFL players and professional athletes that have been drafted in Major League Baseball as well. Tom Brady was one, John Elway is another one. I had a whole list of them in the presentation I did.
Cal Ripken Jr. was an All-American soccer player, I believe, all this type of thing.
And Michael Vick was drafted by the Colorado Rockies as well. And there's a number of them. You can just search on the internet. That the best athletes and Hall of Fame level athletes did not just grow up playing one sport. They grew up playing a multitude of different sports, and that's not only good from a from a social perspective, but it's also good from a physical development perspective as well too.
Can I stop you on that? You said something that I want to jump on. That is from the soul, because there's a maturation process also, spiritual, intellectual, emotional maturation that is our stepping stones to this level of performance also.
Absolutely, absolutely. You just learn. If you're only dealing with one sport, you're only going to know with results from one perspective and one point of view. But if you have a broad understanding of, all right, what's it feel like to win a football game? What's it feel like to win a baseball game? What's it feel to lose a baseball game? What's it feel like to lose in a soccer game? These are all different perspectives that you can call upon when you start to specialize into a particular sport, because you can know how to, number one, handle emotions, handle other teammates and perspectives and body language and attitude much more in a more mature way, so you can ultimately be more successful. You know what I mean? Because if you've never been exposed to these different types of situations, different types of circumstances, you're not really going to know how to react. You know what I mean? All you're going to know, it's like a toolbox. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you're going to start to think everything's a nail. So developing and playing in a variety of different sports at an early age is not only teach you different skills and different movement patterns and different putting your body in different types of positions, and also developing different types of muscle groups. It's also going to develop you from a mental standpoint, because the mental approach towards competing isn't that much different, but the mental approach to different situations might be different in every single sport.
Now, of course, this is something that I feel is just a huge hole. At the upper levels, the game is all mental. Talking about something that is 100% mental, that is 0% taught at the lower levels.
There's something that I often like to say is you've got to be able to fit the program to the athlete and not fit the athlete to the program.
Wow.
There's a model called the long-term athletic development model by Istvan Bayi, and a lot of it's based on chronological age. At a certain age level, these are the things that you got to work on. When you're at a younger age, say less than 10 years old, that's a perfect time to try to work on different types of movement skills, learning how to catch, learning how to throw, learning how to kick, learning how to swim, learning how to jump, leap, bound, all those types of things. And as you start to mature physiologically, hormonally, that's when you can do more intense types of training. So at an early age, if you're less than 12 years old, even 10 years old, everything should be geared towards fun. You know what I mean? Like having fun. Like
what was that again? Less than 10?
Less than 10, 12 to 10.
Wow,
yeah, ideally 10 probably.
And how many kids are turned away from a sport because they were told at a certain age, you can't do this, you're a failure, and all of a sudden that kid that was a little overweight, a little gawky, walking around when he's 10, all of a sudden he's 6'2", 195 pounds as a senior, and he could have been a terrific athlete.
Yeah, and it's in those types of mentalities that sometimes youth coaches put on their kids can affect them all the way into adulthood. You know what I mean? If they've never been really taught having a growth type of mindset versus a fixed mindset, of being able to taught about learning process and hard work and effort, and not just being able to, you can do this or you can't do this.
When I talk about the baseball industry specifically, but I think it applies to all the youth sports, it's become a gaming industry. Okay, it's just based on game rather than skill development teaching. When I asked how you evaluate, was development and projection. It has nothing to do with, is he ready to do the skill today? It's all based on development and projection. And at the college level, you guys are Division I. That's the type of thing that they're looking for also. Am I correct?
Yes, it is. It is. That's the way when our coaches look to go recruiting, they looked at physical tools. What's their makeup physically? Are they fast? Are they explosive? What kind of inherent natural qualities is that to them? And also, how close are they to their ceiling? If somebody's kind of maxed out towards their ceiling, then maybe they're not going to develop in 3 to 4 years as good. They might have reached their potential in high school. They might be a good Division III player, Division II player. Whereas if somebody is still a little raw, that's somebody you can really develop, because you can work on improving those types of skills.
There are 1,000 examples of, off the top of my head, Eric Bedard, who's getting $5 million pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates was walked on for fun at Norwalk Community College, and I didn't even know if he played baseball in high school.
Really?
Ben Sheets, who beat the Cubans in the 2000 Olympics, pitched something like 12 innings total in high school. You know, it goes on and on and on.
It's huge, because if you're doing a variety of different skills and different sports growing up and developing, you're going to be that much more prepared when you start to specialize into a particular sport, because you're going to know how to position your body in different ways. If the coach says, all right, I want you to change your technique to this, you're going to, more likely than not, you're going to have an understanding, because, oh, I can just do this, because you're a better, well-rounded, developed athlete. Like, I've worked with pitchers in the past, and pitchers are probably the worst athletes I've ever seen, because all they do is pitch. They don't want to do anything else. They work with pitching coaches, they work with, in the off-season,
don't even let them, to tell you the truth.
It won't let them do anything else for fear of being injured.
Right.
Whereas the best pitchers I've had, the ones who were really good athletes, played a number of different sports, and end up being really good pitchers.
Right, exactly. While we're on that, I want to address that, because I know you have a program of strength exercise and stuff that are specifically for pitchers. It is it's a very difficult skill to learn, because it's completely contrary to what your body wants to do. And you told me once that it is the single most traumatic thing.
Yeah, it's one of the most violent, traumatic things you can do to your body.
So this is why one of the things we're going to specifically try to address this on the website. Throwing is very, very much a creating balance points. It's a sequence that involves rhythm, stability, flexibility, and particularly that sequence of leverage positions and strengthening your body at those positions. Can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, pitching is a extremely coordinated task. Needs proper synchronization and proper timing at different points of which muscles need to contract, which muscles need to relax, which muscles need to be able to be stable, which muscles need to help generate force and velocity and power. And the best way to become a better pitcher is to work on technique, to improve your mechanics. What strength conditioning does is it allows you to better perform your skill over and over and over again. Like, the biggest thing is you've got a movement foundation. Like, you've got to be able to move really well. When I talk about movement, that means your flexibility, your mobility, your stability, making sure that we're moving appropriately at the correct joints. A common thing that happens is if you've got an locked up ankle, which means it's not going to allow your ankle to move very well. It can affect your knee, it can affect your hip. But what it's really ultimately going to do is going to affect your opposite shoulder, because that lead leg is a leg that's your anchor point as you pivot your entire body over that leg.
Throwing is a sequence of correct positions, and your arm is the last thing in the sequence, and it's the weakest link in the sequence. And it's amazing. We talk about this if you're, for instance, in fact, one of the things that's very interesting, I've done a couple clinics, for instance, with Bill Holloway at Eastern Connecticut, who was, I think, president of the American Baseball Coaches Association. He said, which has been a mantra for me, he says, kids at Little League should not pitch from the windup, because immediately a kid is off balance. And if he's off balance, then he lands incorrectly, that he's not in power positions, and again, that all goes, then somehow the arm has to make a compensatory movement rather than a strength movement. Do you agree with that?
I do. It all comes down to positioning. And what we do within the weight room is ultimately teach how to get in positions. And first and
be
foremost,
strong at that.
First is, can you get into a position, right? For example, can we get into a lunge position, because that's going to help with our stride. Can we get into a lunge position? Because if we don't have optimal flexibility and mobility to be able to get in that position, we're going to cause compensations up our chain.
Right.
So first, can we get in a position? Then can we get in a position with loads? We try to add strength to that foundation of position. Because what happens then is if we add strength to it, now we're solidifying that movement pattern. We're solidifying that particular movement skill. Once we add strength to it, then we try to add speed to it. Now, can we do it with a high amount of velocity or at a high rate? Once we can do it with speed, now can we do it fast? over and over and over and over again.
I tell kids that speed, it's just like driving a car. Okay, if the highway can take 55 and you're going 80, you're out of control. Better to back down, especially with something with so many complicated parts. That's how you need to do it, is in breaking down to the parts and achieving that sequence of parts, and also being strong and flexible at those parts.
Absolutely.
I kind of want to end on that
Okay.
because I know that Brijesh, we're going to have him again. He's going to offer a program of these exercises. What we will do is we'll offer a program where we will show you those positions, and then he will give you a parallel with a program that will allow you to get strong and flexible, and so you can achieve those positions in throwing and hitting and fielding.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, everybody.